Good week. I'm 2-1. Not for the other one to my left. She is.
I finally won a game.
And 2. 7th place. Good for 7th place in God Bless Fantasy Football. 2-1. Good for 4th place, baby. I'm up there. I'm vibing.
I'm overhauling some stuff this week. I'm definitely moving up. I was in 10th place last week.
This is what's crazy to me.
Dead last.
I'm at the point to where I'm like, I can really take advantage of some players on certain teams. Maybe I can improve my team by flipping some options, not totally trade raping, but in order to grab the guys that I want, you kind of want to be on the better end of those deals. I've been thinking about some of those things. This week 3, we're starting to get to that point now to where it's okay to relinquish some of those guys that you were like, oh, I'm so big on this guy this year. He's going to go nuts. He hasn't yet, but maybe you can take advantage of somebody else and take a guy that is highly touted, but hasn't been going nuts. Maybe that fantasy manager is like, I'm ready to make this deal. Get this guy off my team. I'm hoping that this is the week I can pull some off. And when I come back next Tuesday, I can't wait to tell you more. It's God Bless Fantasy Football with Sausha Durkan, Andrew Rogers. This is what is just mind-boggling to me, Sausha. Stay Safe has made 26 moves this year already.
Yeah.
26 moves.
Every notification I get on my phone from our fantasy football league is all him.
Pat and JT and Ashley's unrivaled team have not made a move yet. Ashley's unrivaled team, that's still a great backstory. That's a team that I had to create using my girlfriend's account, and then we transferred that over to Amanda and Malia. They are 0-3, but they have a lot of points for. They have 301 points for, and they are 0-3. They've gotten screwed at the start of this year.
For sure.
There are 3 teams ahead of them. Count me in and Stay Safe. 4 teams ahead of them. 5 teams. Andrew can't do math. 5 teams ahead that have less points for and are better rated than Ashley's unrivaled team. 0-3. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
That's so many close losses. Points against 321. What is happening in those matchups? I'm sorry. That's the nature of fantasy.
Yeah. And I bet that they're both super busy folks. I bet they haven't moved anybody around either.
Well, this last week they lost by 2.
Oh, geez.
Heartbreaker there. I won without a defense
for next week. For the next fantasy football league I join.
To lose by 2?
No. Just to never check.
Oh. Auto draft and never check.
Yes.
Sometimes that works. More
Sometimes
often than not.
it, you know?
Yeah, but more often than not, you really want to draft players because I don't trust Yahoo's algorithm all too much. Now it is Waiver Wire Wednesday? Tuesday? Jeez, where am I? It's Waiver Wire Tuesday here on God Bless Fantasy Football. Ahead, looking toward week 4 now. It's an interesting board. We saw some people go down in week 3. 2 running backs in particular that we'll be touching on, and then there's just some other names cycling through the waiver wire that are people that I think should be on your team now. Yeah. And we'll get into those in just a minute. But Sausha, as you start to rework your team, what are you thinking about right now? How can people attack the rest of the season now that we are 3 weeks deep?
I think typically when you have drafted your team already, you probably picked up the quarterback that you wanted to have. So I think really strategy-wise for quarterbacks, it's stashing somebody on your bench that potentially could step up and have a bigger week than your current starting quarterback. Then my next thing is always making sure that I'm either swapping out or finding a better suited wide receiver or 2. In my case, I need a couple. They're just not working out for me. And so that'll be the first thing that I'm looking at this week. And then obviously you need a good stable of running backs as well. Tight ends, I understand the NFL's kind of changed a little bit, but it really depends on the scheme of the team itself on who you're going to pick up. I've got Kelsey on my team, so I'm not getting rid of him.
Well, obviously not.
I'm going to keep him.
If you have a top 5 option at tight end, you're not doing anything.
No,
you're not moving any pieces
you're staying
around.
There.
I had Kyle Pitts, and I'm still going to ride that dude until the last game because there's nobody that I can think of that can replace him out there on the waivers.
Yeah. The only other thing that I think of is sometimes like sometimes the defense can add and like round out the week for you. So, maybe keeping your eye on that stuff, maybe swapping them out week to week, depending on how comfortable you feel with your team.
Shuffling those streaming defenses are very important.
Yeah.
I said that with the Dallas matchup last night, and it worked out for a lot of fantasy managers out there. Dallas's defense, all of those S's, they went off. They went off, frankly. And that's a type of defense, a streaming defense, that wins you a fantasy week. When you are trailing by X amount of points, I'm not 100% sure what they ended up with. I think they ended up close to 11 or 12 points.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's a great day for a fantasy defense. Yeah. And they were productive. Those are the teams that you should be looking out for as the weeks go on, because I, for one, am not somebody that holds on to a defense. Obviously, I forgot to put a defense in this week.
Just gonna say.
That's what happens when you run 5 fantasy leagues. You just kind of just roll with the punches, and all of a sudden then you forget, don't have somebody in. Everybody played. I'm not dropping anybody, so I guess I'm risking it this week. And that's what I did. It worked out. Who cares? I'm all for it. And we move on from there. But I'm completely with you when you have your stance on defenses. Just go through them. Find the best matchups. Make it a matchup-based thing, and slot them into your fantasy
Same
lineup.
thing for your kickers.
Same thing. Well, frankly, just get a kicker on a good team.
Yeah.
Get somebody that scores a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I did last week, or so I thought I did last week. I grabbed Dustin Hopkins off the free agent list, kicker for the Los Angeles Chargers. I am about to eat my own words. I was stomping Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars down on Sunday. I said, don't play anybody. I sat Christian Kirk too. He went off and got a touchdown again. James Robinson, I said, blow him off. Let's start ETN. That didn't work either. My hot take on the Jaguars, Doug Peterson just flipped me the bird and said, no, we're not doing anything that Andrew said. And they went off. They scored over 30 points and held Los Angeles to 10 points. So, I'm not always right. I'll admit that. I'm not always right, but I have
been very wrong on Sunday's episode on a couple of the people.
I've been right more than I've been wrong.
List. Yes.
What's the quote from The Wolf on Wall Street? I ask people to judge me on my losers because I have so few. That is it. That's it.
There you go. Okay.
I think that's the quote.
I've only seen that movie one time.
Don't judge me on my winners.
I fell asleep.
Yeah. Don't judge me on my winners. Judge me on my losers because I have so few. It's a great thing. And the guy starts like jotting things down on the notepad next to him because he's like, that's a great line. Let's get into some additions for this week. And let's start off with the running backs, because I think that's where most people's heads are turning, because running backs are so few and far between. Khalil Herbert is first on my list for a quick addition. David Montgomery went down early in the week 3 matchup in the first quarter. Herbert went on to explode in that matchup. He had 20 carries, 157 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The Bears are committed to the run. It's obvious. It's been obvious this year. He doesn't carry much value when Montgomery is in, but if Montgomery misses time, he instantly slots up as a must-start RB2 in all formats, PPR standard and so forth. In the 4 games where he compiled 18 or more attempts last year when David Montgomery was out, he totaled over 72 yards per game. In the 2 starts that he made, he had 197 total yards and a touchdown over those 2 games. This is a guy that you snag instantly, because what we saw in week 3, that will carry over if D-Mount's not on the field.
Absolutely. And I also had Khalil Herbert on my list as well. And I don't really have anything to add to that because my notes are almost exactly the same. The next running back I had on my list was Alexander Mattison. Dalvin Cook left Sunday's game in the 4th quarter with a shoulder injury. Mattison stepped in and rushed for 28 and a touchdown on 7 carries and caught a 16-yard pass. So if Cook is going to miss next week's matchup with the Saints, I feel like Mattison becomes a must-add.
Oh, it's the perfect time to stash Alexander Mattison. Dalvin Cook always gets injured. Always. He's never played a full season in the NFL. And I'm not even joking when I say that, which is crazy to think about. This is the guy that we've drafted over the past 5 years in the first round of fantasy drafts. And he has never played a full season. So you always have to think about stashing Alexander Mattison when you can. Now's the time. You need to be able to foresee the future.
Right.
Look into the magic orb and say, oh, this is the time to get Alexander Madison because we know Dalvin Cook will most likely be off the field for a majority of time. And majority is kind of a rough word to use when you only play 17 games. But when you have a guy that could play possibly 4 games in a season, start 4 games, which is Alexander Madison, that I would think is a good chunk out of the whole season schedule to have a guy come in and be one of the best running back handcuffs, let alone another must-start RB2 if Dalvin Cook misses time. Now, that being said, Dalvin Cook is most likely to play with a brace in week 4, so keep that in mind. But that's why we say it's the perfect time to stash this guy.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just wanted to bounce off of that.
Please, go get him.
Let's go move on to a wide receiver here that I really like. Mac Hollins. Okay, who's Mac Hollins? That's what I said when I woke up this morning. Who the heck is Mac Hollins? I did some research, 4th round pick. I think he went to the Eagles first, played for the Dolphins for a year, maybe 2. But Mac Hollins is currently, I would say, the 3rd string wide receiver for the Raiders, but the 4th passing option because I would throw Darren Waller light years ahead of Mac Hollins. He has one of the best fantasy profile photos. If you want to take a peek at that, Mac Hollins, he looks like he got a perm before he took his photo. Not only does he have wondrous hair,
he sure does,
but Mac Hollins led the Raiders in receiving back-to-back weeks. He played at least 87% of snaps this year. And for a guy that's in front of Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, for a guy that's in front of all of those guys in target share, receiving yards, maybe not target share, I'll just go with receiving yards. I kind of went out on a limb there and said target share, but he could. That's enough for me to say, hey, get on my bench right now. Because if Hunter Renfrow misses time, which he is working through an injury, battling through an injury, this is the time to grab a guy like Mac Hollins, who's been seeing a lot of balls from Derek Carr, especially in week 3.
Yeah. I actually almost put him on my list.
Only for his hair, right?
No, just looking at the stat lines and things like that. For wide receiver, I've got Tyler Boyd for the Bengals. T. Higgins was on and off the field after a hit early in the game against the Jets, and Boyd had quite the game ending up with 4 of 5 for 105 and a TD. He's only 51% owned, and Cincinnati has a favorable matchup against the Dolphins and the Ravens coming up. So he'll see some action even if Chase and Higgins are healthy.
My only knock on Tyler Boyd is that wide receiving room is just so jam-packed. And I know Joe Burrow likes to sling it. Jamar Chase hasn't been Jamar Chase of last year just yet. Be patient. He'll get there. They'll work some things out. They'll retool the offense. They'll find ways to give Chase the ball. But Tyler Boyd is so inconsistent. And that is just my biggest knock on that dude, is that I can never trust putting him in my lineup. The only reason I have him on my bench in one of my leagues is because the bench is so large and the waiver wire is abysmal. Like you can't find anybody on that. But you can slot him in for 1 week when your receiver has a bye and then say, good riddance. I can't trust you anymore. He had a huge week last week. We get it. But the games that came before that, he really wasn't. He didn't really exist. He wasn't on the field. Like he was on the field, but he wasn't. Does that make sense?
He didn't participate as much as you would want somebody.
He participated. Joe Burrow just played playground football and said, I'm throwing to my best friend the whole time.
Right.
That's all he does.
Those were my notes actually a couple of weeks ago.
4 catches for 33 yards and a touchdown in week 1, 2 catches, 17 yards in week 2, and then he went off for 4 catches, 105 and a touchdown in week 3. The weeks that we saw, he's a boomer bust, right?
Right.
Boomer bust, touchdown play. He's going to get you 5-6 points in a standard league. He's going to get you in a PPR league no more than 8 points most weeks. But if he can grab that touchdown, that's what you hope for during your bye week. When you slide him in, instead of a Devontae Adams, you play Tyler Boyd. Instead of an AJ Brown, you play Tyler Boyd, and so forth. He's an interesting grab. It's hard for me to say go after him like Sasha because of the inconsistency and all the factors that kind of surround. And frankly, the Bengals Bengals offense hasn't been good.
No,
and so
it really hasn't.
I can't even trust him even more now.
I thought for a good option, he's only, I mean, not very many people are owning him. If I needed to slot somebody in, even at the flex position,
you have a good
throw
quarterback
him in there. Yeah,
you have a good
exactly.
quarterback. You can expect some type of production out of him. He won't get you 0 points. So if one or 2 points is better than none, right?
Yes.
That's
for
what
some people.
That's what I like about Greg Dortch right now. And I know I've brought his name up once or twice during our waiver wire shows. But now it's no joke. Like, it was kind of a joke. Like, oh, Greg Dortch. Yeah, Kyler Murray likes this guy. Marquise Brown wasn't putting up the numbers right away in week 1. It was either that or in week 2 I talked about him. But Marquise Brown saw 17 targets in week 3, so I can't say that anymore. But it's now really no joke that Greg Dortch should be owned in your league if you are in a PPR league. And I am going to frankly state PPR in this case, because over 3 weeks, Greg Dortch has seen 23 balls, 23 passes. What he does with those targets is why he makes his way on my list again. He went for 9 targets, 7 catches, 63 yards in week 1. He went for 4 targets, 4 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown in week 2. Then last week, Rondale Moore was out. Keep that in mind. 10 targets, 9 catches, 80 yards. That's 17 points in a PPR league.
Yeah.
That's insane. Kyler Murray passed 58 times in week 3. Also a career high for him. But the Cards are a pass-first offense. Why? Because they suck. They are playing from behind. Most games, if not all games this year, they've been playing from behind. Always playing from behind. And when a team plays from behind, Sasha, what happens?
Get desperate.
They throw the ball. And when you throw the ball, you have guys like Greg Dortch out there to catch it, while DeAndre Hopkins is still out until, week 7, week 8? I'm all for it. Still, I have written down in my notes, still 3 weeks away from DeAndre Hopkins. So he won't play till week 7. Greg Dortch is the guy right now. If you need somebody instantly to make an impact so that you can start climbing the rankings in your fantasy league, get Greg Dortch now. Buy in.
It will be... No, I'm just kidding.
I'm bought. We are in a standard league. I don't know how much I like Greg Dortch in a standard league, but in a PPR league, if this guy is seeing the ball 9 or 10 times, and like I said, it's what he does with the catches. Like, Kyler Murray throws it to him and he catches it. It's not like he's being targeted 10 times and he catches the ball twice.
Right.
He's making plays when the ball is coming his way. And that's all I need to know whenever I'm playing in a PPR league. Yeah. If I can get 17 points out of a receiver without a touchdown, I'm in.
Let's go. I think next year we definitely, now that Pat will know a little bit more, we should be a PPR.
I think so. Well, frankly, Pat and JT haven't made one move this year, so it wouldn't matter. We could be in a PPR league.
They wouldn't know. They wouldn't know anyway.
They'd be like, "Oh wow, this guy got a ton of points this week," and their receivers are awesome.
Yeah.
So they would really benefit having PPR be this year, opposed to next.
Well, you live and learn. The last person I've got on my list here, if you need a quarterback and you need to stash him, I grab Jared Goff right now. He's only 45% owned and had a decent game for the Lions, completing 25 of 41 for 277, a TD. He did have an interception, but that was like at the end of the game, that Hail Mary throw in the loss to the Vikings. The Lions take on Seattle, and their secondary's only allowed 3 TD passes so far this season. However, Detroit is actually favored at home against Seattle this week.
That's because it's 2 disgusting quarterbacks.
Yes.
Jared Goff and Geno Smith. I may need to take a break and go to the bathroom and puke for a second. Holy cow.
It'll be a really fun game to watch. You should watch it. But if you needed to stash a quarterback, he's been playing fairly well. I would throw him if I had and was desperate for a quarterback.
You know, it's so funny. So Jared Goff, right? Kind of had a love-hate relationship with that guy. He was the first quarterback to play in LA after the Rams moved from St. Louis. He was a number 1 pick. He was a good quarterback in college, right? We get it. Was that the same draft as Carson Wentz? Did Carson Wentz go 2 in that draft?
That's a good question.
Do me a favor.
It was either the same
it
year or it was like one off.
Here's where I'm at, though. There are so many other quarterbacks outside of Jared Goff that you can grab. Marcus Mariota is one of them.
I actually had Marcus Mariota written down first, but I had him on my list last week. I was like, I got to pick somebody else.
There's one of them. Jared Goff, it's just so hard. It's so hard to. The Lions will play from behind. He'll huck the ball, but with as many attempts as he has, he doesn't complete a lot of passes. Like he should complete so much more than he actually does, and he can't use his feet.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's weird. Who do you grab? Not really sure. Mac Jones is out there in most fantasy league formats. I like Mac Jones more. I like Ryan Tannehill more. I like Matt Ryan more. Marcus Mariota, I said Trevor Lawrence is available. I've been saying this dude's been going to be a bust. Well, he keeps, again, proving me wrong. Doug Peterson says I can do whatever I want and win with a football team. He did that with the Eagles. Now he's going to do that with Jacksonville. If Jacksonville makes the playoffs, all hell will break loose.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. By the way, it was the 2016 draft. Goff was taken first. Wentz was taken second.
Oh. I know my stuff. Cam's over there doubting me. You jerk. Last guy on my list, really fast, Julio Jones. Quickly, going to give a quick nugget here, and then we will bounce. He, I think for the second time, is appearing on my list.
Yes.
Tampa Bay and Tom Brady are nothing without the playmakers. Mike Evans was gone last week. Julio Jones was gone last week. Chris Godwin was out last week. They scored 12 points. Russell Gage was their number one receiving option. And good for Russell Gage. He had 84 yards and a touchdown. But when Julio Jones is out there, when Mike Evans is out there, Tom Brady is efficient. And until those guys stay on the field consistently, Tampa Bay will continue to score 20 or less points. And that's what they've done all season long. They've scored 20 or less. They're lucky to even have a win under their belt right now. But Julio Jones is a guy to grab when you can, because when he's on the field, he makes plays. That's it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to go any further because Julio's been off the field more than he's been on the field.
Right.
But if he is expected to play against Kansas City, which he is, expect the pass to be present there. Tampa Bay is going to need to throw the ball in that game to win.
Yes.
Leonard Fournette will see his carries. He sees his carries every week. But Tom Brady needs to throw the football more. I think his attempts are down. I think his attempts are down like 10 or 12 this year. But think about it. Julio's been off the field most of the year. Mike Evans, like I said, was suspended in last game. And Chris Godwin got hurt in week 1. You're not going to throw the ball to Russell Gage, Brashad Perriman, and company. You're going to want to throw the ball to the guys that you know are going to make the big plays. He hasn't seen those yet. Tom Brady should come back to full form unless his divorce and all of the drama going on is going to keep, spiraling him downhill.
Mike Evans is back in a couple games, isn't he?
He's back next week.
Next week?
Yeah.
Okay.
He only got suspended a game.
Okay.
I think that's what it was.
No, I think you're right. I couldn't remember if it was this upcoming week or the following. But yeah. Anyway, good point.
But that's it. I just wanted to throw that name out there. He's somebody to keep an eye on if he plays. Julio Jones is Julio Jones. He's been drafted in the upper ends of fantasy drafts in his prime. And then even as he kind of trickled out of his prime, he was 5th round, 8th round, whatever it is. He's still a guy to keep an eye on. All I'm saying. Those are the picks. We have Khalil Herbert, Mac Hollins, Alexander Madison, Greg Dortch, and Julio Jones on my list. Sasha adds in Tyler Boyd and Jared Goff. Follow along for more with God Bless Fantasy Football because we have all of the information you need in order to come back and win for next week, which is week 4. We'll be back on Sunday leading up to game day. Send in your start-sit questions. We didn't have a lot last week. Actually, we didn't have any last week. So send them in. We've been consistent. I think first week I said sit Darnell Mooney. That worked out for a fantasy manager. A couple weeks later, it was Miles Sanders and somebody else. I said start Miles Sanders. That worked out. The only reason I kept Miles Sanders' name in my head is because it worked out.
Right,
If it didn't work out, then I probably
mentioned it.
Yeah, I probably just air out my ear and just let all those thoughts go out to my right side. But that's it. God Bless Fantasy Football back on Sunday. There are many things a man can do with his time, but none are better than this. God bless you, and God bless Fantasy Football.